Vince, welcome. Good evening. How are you keeping?
Thank you. Fine, Doug.
So let me just quickly break down for our viewers, Vince, what we saw in Rishi Sunak's budget, just the main headlines. On the expenditure side, especially the sort of short-term help, furlough extended beyond the 21st of June when lockdown was supposed to end to the end of September, extending the stamp duty holiday, extending the universal credit uplift for a further 6 months, extending the business rates holiday until July, extending support to the self-employed. That's the short-term spending ledger. And then on the tax side, corporation tax to go up from 19 to 25% in 2023. Income tax thresholds frozen once they've gone up next year. They will be frozen for the foreseeable future. A new mortgage guarantee scheme to make 95% mortgages available again. The new free ports policy. One of my only points of light in this entire budget was that my beloved city of Southampton is to become a free port. A new super deduction tax relief for corporation tax and a UK infrastructure bank. Vince, what do you make of it all? How has Rishi Sunak done?
Well, if to use your phrase, it was the most significant budget in a generation, I think I must have missed something. I mean, there was one really interesting, unexpected, the big hike in corporation tax offset by the big investment allowance. They were bigger and bolder than I think we'd been led to believe, but almost everything else had been trailed. I think the things which struck me were, first of all, of course, this was primarily about shoring up the economy because the pandemic's gone on much longer than we thought. We haven't really yet got round to the difficult problems of how we pay for it. There was a lot of reinventing the wheel. The investment, the infrastructure bank was the Green Investment Bank in a new form. The levelling up fund was the Regional Growth Fund in a new form. The accelerator came back with a new name. George Osborne's Help to Buy scheme was back in a new form. So there was a lot of reinvention, not a great deal of originality and no humor. But maybe, maybe we will see things gradually emerge in the small print of the Red Book. I mean, one particular thing which he simply didn't mention, well, there is quite a big tax rise going through, which is the council tax. Mm-hmm. Which matters to a lot of people. And that was, of course, hidden because it's local government.
Well, let me start with the overall state of the public finances, Vince. I mean, obviously, they're in a bad state, but I think even fiscal hawks like myself kind of agree that it's unsurprising they should be in a bad state, and to immediately attempt to remedy that might do more harm than good. But of course, when you came into government in 2010 with the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition, and you became business secretary, I mean, let's look back at what the finances were then. The deficit was about 10% of GDP in 2010. Sorry, in 2015, it was about 5%. Debt was 67% of GDP in 2010, 80% in 2015. Now let's look at 2020. Deficit touching 20%, debt around 100% of GDP. And of course, one of the first tasks of the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition was to put the public finances back into some sort of orderly shape. You didn't quite get there to balancing the budgets at the end of that 5-year parliament, but there was movement in that direction. The position here is far, far worse, perhaps unsurprisingly, right? But all of that good work by the coalition has been undone. When do you think there is going to have to be a reckoning up about this? I mean, if not now, next year, 2 years' time, or does it keep getting kicked down the road?
Well, as you acknowledged, I mean, you describe yourself as a fiscal hawk, and I think, we all agree that rushing to deal with the budget deficit, let alone working down the accumulated stock of debt, is premature. We shouldn't be doing that now. But there were two big differences, I think, from the coalition years. The first was that is interest rates. When we came into power, the 10-year bond yield was, I think, 3.7%, 10-year treasuries. And we expected that it could go much higher because there was a lot of worry about the UK being the most exposed of the industrial countries because of the size of the banks relative to other developed countries. And we could easily have found ourselves in double-digit interest rates. I mean, that was the fear. I mean, it wasn't realized, but that hung over everything. Mm-hmm. And the second is that we weren't suppressing growth. as we are through the lockdown, and which will bounce back to a large extent, growth was constrained by the banking crisis and the unwillingness of banks to lend because they were shoring up their balance sheets. I mean, it was a fundamentally different economic problem.